There you go. Good evening. I'm Clovis West Principal Eric Swain, and I want to thank you all for coming tonight. These past 4 days have been upsetting for our Clovis West students, staff, parents, and administrative teams, as well as those at Fort Washington. Our students come to school to learn and thrive in a safe environment, and that has been disrupted by these swatting calls that have seemed to plague not only our schools, but schools across the country. I'm pleased tonight to be joined by FBI Agent Brian Nardella, Deputy Chief Mindy Casto from Fresno PD, Sergeant Anthony Alvarado from Fresno PD, Captain Tom Rowe from Fresno PD, Chief Lee Mayberry from Clovis Unified School District as well. We are all outraged and extremely concerned about the negative impact of these pranks, and I know our parents share my frustrations and concerns for our students. I recognize that this situation is scary and frightening for our students, our staff, and everyone who works every day to protect our kids. I want to personally commend our teachers for their response and support for students. I want to acknowledge our students for their maturity and their resilience. Our administrative team and support staff have been nothing short of remarkable in securing our campus and working alongside law enforcement. I would finally like to acknowledge both Officer Doug Wright of Clovis West and Officer John Rose of Kasner for the support of our students and staff in these times. Their familiar faces and relationships have been invaluable over this past week. Tonight, members of our school, law enforcement, and district teams are here to answer questions we've received from our community. If your question isn't answered, you should have received a note card as you came in. There will be a point in the meeting where you'll be invited to put down your question and give it to one of the administrators on the side. Some of those questions include, if we know these calls aren't credible, why must we still put kids through a lockdown? Why does Fort Washington also go on lockdown when these threats aren't naming their school? Why have you not been able to catch this person? What consequences might this person face? Will parents know if this person is caught? Why do we not cancel school? Why do we hear from our kids first when the school is locked down? What are the police and district doing to stop this? How are the absences resulting from kids being afraid to come to school, how are those being handled? Is independent study available for students who choose to remain at home? What measures are being taken to help our kids and staff through the social, emotional impact of this situation? What can we as parents do to support our kids right now? Those are some of the questions that we will address. I also want to recognize 4 board members representing our Clovis Unified School District tonight, our school board tonight. Thank you, Dina Combs-Flores, Clint Olivier, Tiffany Stoker-Matson, and Dr. Stephen Fogg for being here. Our superintendent, Emer O'Brien, is a great partner of our schools, and I'd like to have her join me now on stage.
Thank you, Eric, and good evening, everyone. You know, these incidents are without a doubt alarming, and they create fear and disruption for your kids, for our team, and for our community. Over the past few days, I'm imagining what it must be like to be a mom, what it would be like for my daughters who attended Clovis West, what it would be like as a teacher or as a DP or a principal of this school, as I was for 5 years here at CDO. All of those emotions, anxiety, fear, frustration, worry, uncertainty, anger, these are all emotions that I and my team have been feeling too. These are your kids, and yet when your kids step onto our campus, we think of them as our kids too. And so this is personal for us. We do not take these situations lightly, and we wanted to take some time today to come together as a school and as a parent and law enforcement community to, before all of you, answer many of the questions that we've been receiving, and also to talk about how we're responding. I want to thank Area Superintendent Dr. Mark Hammock, Clovis West Principal Eric Swain, his administrative team, and every member of our Clovis West staff, as well as Fort Washington Principal Hashimoto and her team. Experiences like this are challenging for our staff, and yet they have overcome their own fears and anxieties to be that strong, comforting adult that our kids have needed in those moments. Fresno Police Department and Chief Balderrama have been here to support us, and you'll hear from Deputy Chief Costo in a few minutes. They, along with officers from our own Clovis Unified Police Department, take any potential risk to our schools with utmost seriousness and leave no resource on the sidelines to take care of our kids. This year, like so many years prior, I heard them this year, like so many years prior, when all of our staff was led through safety training by our Clovis Unified officers, I heard them time and time again assure our team that at any hint of danger to our students or our staff, they would run toward and not away from any danger. As a parent, I know that that is a reassuring thing for you to hear. Your kids are surrounded by people willing to put your kids' safety first, regardless of the credibility of the threat. And so at this time, I want to turn it over to Captain Lee, our own police chief, Lee Maybury, who'll talk a little further. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Brien. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Obviously, we don't want to be meeting on circumstances like this. Right now, though, it is our world, unfortunately. And I just want you to know from our department here in the Clovis Unified School District, we take every threat seriously, and we're going to respond accordingly. Fortunately, we have such a great relationship with our law enforcement partners, both locally, state, and federal, and working in unison to try and address these issues, make sure that we respond to these sites appropriately, and provide the safety and security that our students, our children, and our staff require. That's our mission, that's our goal, and we will not defer from that. We're always going to be reacting in a way that is best suited for our students, our staff, and our community. With that, I will have Deputy Chief Casto come up on stage with me. She is going to talk a little bit about what we're doing in unison as far as the investigation, their response, and with us, as well as FBI Agent Brian Nardala to come up as well and talk about what is happening on the federal side of this.
First, I don't want to waste any time giving you the information that our detectives have been working on this, and not just Fresno police detectives. We work with the district attorney's office, the FBI, and other local partners, Clovis Unified, and our detectives have immediately been able to determine that this threat, that we believe all three threats, obviously at Clovis West here, as well as a threat over the weekend at Costco, are related, and that the threat is not coming from anywhere locally or within the United States. So that digital footprint and those digital breadcrumbs that we're still following, so far every indication is it's not local and that it's outside the United States. However, that investigation doesn't stop there. I feel like that's the most important information to get you right immediately to help provide some kind of understanding that we don't believe it's local or that there's a local threat going on here. However, that we still will continue the investigation to determine if we can identify the individual, and if there's a country outside the United States that that person resides in, that we will still work with the FBI and other agencies to bring that person to justice. So there are some questions I felt like could be addressed by the Fresno Police Department. Superintendent, would you like me to address those now or wait for a later time? Okay. Some of the questions are, if these calls that came in, just so you know, they were not to the school. 2 came into the Sheriff's Department 911 centers, and 1 came into the Fresno Police Department 911 centers. And Then we contact the school, the law enforcement agency contacts the school to let them know, and their response is to immediately take actions to protect the students. So that may be sometimes the reason you're not getting an immediate notification from the school, because they're busy taking action when we notify them of the threat. And why do we still put kids on lockdown if, by the third, I heard some people's concerns was by the third threat today, the response was not exactly the same as it was the first time. Well, officers are taking into consideration, do we take every threat seriously? Yes, but we also evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. And by the time we got around to today, the response wasn't any less serious or meaningful, but it was measured based on some information we already had that wasn't immediately available to parents and folks at the school. So the officers are still responding exactly, and that's one thing I want to impress here. The Fresno Police Department wants you to have confidence in our ability to respond to these. We train for it, we train with other agencies, we train with Fresno Fire and Rescue. We take it very seriously, and although we are the biggest numbers to respond, we always reach out for help when it benefits the community, here your students, and that's with our Clovis Unified partners, with the Sheriff's Department, with other federal and other state agencies to provide the best response possible under emergency circumstances. So why do kids get put on lockdown? That's a decision for the school, but why do we still have these responses? Because we treat it as if it's credible until we can determine that it's not. And I'd like to share too that, once things kind of calmed down at the school and children were released this week, that isn't where the investigation stops. That's actually where it just gets started. And our detectives immediately make emergency inquiries into different digital companies to start preserving and gathering the information they need to determine the identity of the suspect. We have not been able to, the question is, why have you not been able to catch or identify this person? As I said, the investigation is ongoing and there's a lot of follow-up to be done, and it is being done at this time. And it's not just the Fresno Police Department working on it. It's us and our partners, as I've mentioned previously. What consequences would a person face for making these kinds of threats? Well, under the state law, it's a PC 422, criminal threats. It's a felony charge. The person, if identified, and if in fact it were a local case, this one does not appear to be, it would be felony charges. There are a myriad of federal charges that could also apply if the person was caught and identified. What are the police in the district doing to stop this? As far as the police, when we have the probable cause to make an arrest on a school threat case, we make it. You've probably seen that in the news at other times. If there is reason to make an arrest, we're absolutely going to do it in order to deter additional folks from making the false threats. And one of the things I'll address, but will be addressed more thoroughly by your school officials, is what can we do to support our kids right now? And what we ask as Fresno Police is to stay engaged with your kids' social media footprint. Know who they're talking to. Have access to their accounts. Do not let them live in a world that you know nothing about. Stay connected with them. Talk to them about it. And again, the main piece of advice we can say to support your kids, stay engaged so you know what's going on and you can support them when they run into trouble. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chief Liebe or with FBI Agent Brian.
Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Brian Nardella. I'm a supervisory special agent with the FBI here in Fresno. And I just want to highlight to everybody just the importance of the collaboration that we've got with Clovis Unified, with Fresno PD. The investigation is ongoing. But there are a lot of ways that all of the organizations involved can add some value to hopefully address this particular threat, find whoever's responsible, and we are doing that. Unfortunately, these cases are rarely ever addressed overnight, which I know is not anything that anybody wants to hear, but we've got the full weight of state, federal, and local governments working to address this. And I would like to echo some of the comments made earlier that I would like to commend the response by Clovis West faculty and staff, the students, as well as all the first responders who were involved that day. I apologize, but we will do our best to prevent this from happening in the future. Thank you.
I'll just add one last bit to the lockdown piece. we're always going to err on the side of safety. So if we're going to start at the lockdown, if we don't have some information that we can go to a shelter in place, because we can always reduce and go down, but we don't want to start at a lower level and then have to raise it. And now we have kids that are out on campus. We have access to those students. So we're always going to start at the highest, and then we'll work our way down at that point. So I just want you to know that. I know it's frustrating. I know your kids are texting you and getting a hold of you, and they're scared. But the safest place for them is behind the locked doors in their classrooms. And just like Dr. O'Brien said, first responders are on their way. And that's the really fortunate thing we have with having officers on scene on every secondary site. They're working with staff and faculty, and Clovis West staff and faculty did an amazing job working with our officers that day. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Eric Swain.
So, additional questions that you have? Yes, ma'am.
If
Oh.
they write them on.
I'm sorry, write them down and then hand them to the side. I've got a couple here. Will all these absences be excused? Yes, they will all be excused. Okay, will it affect their grade? No, they'll have the opportunity to make those assignments up, those tests up. Extracurricular activities postponed to is the question. Our staff is working to support our students. Right now, we're continuing as scheduled. We'll continue to monitor the situation, but extracurricular activities are going on as well.
Independent studies also available for those that feel like they need to be out there.
So if your child, if your student isn't comfortable coming to school, independent study is available.
And that's for Fort Washington.
That's for Fort Washington as well.
Take that.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the question becomes, if students are in a common area outside, it's lunchtime, things like that, what do the students do? There's never an opportune time to practice these things, but we do get students inside as quickly as possible. Large areas like the gym, the MPR, and things like that. We have staff that are out at break times, in between classes, lunchtime, that will grab students and pull them into classrooms and things like that. So, some of those times at lunchtimes, passing periods before and after school, we do have plans in place that we get kids indoors as soon as possible and behind locked doors.
I would add that if your student doesn't feel safe during the school day, the MPR is open, the library is open, they can come to the office, they could go to a nearby classroom. So throughout the day, if they're just uncomfortable being outside, we certainly have buildings that are open. For kids not specifically expressing what they need, what is being done to support mental health? We'll talk about that. We have some of our school psychologists here, but I would, here on our campus, I would tell your student to go to the counselor. We have Brittany Beer here on campus, a mental health provider, so they know where their counseling office is. Start with their counselor, and we can find the support that they need.
So this one may be for our law enforcement partners. Once there is a solve or this case is solved, or there will be information made public, and will we be updated? And then what about copycats?
So yes. One more time.
There you go, sorry.
No, wrong one. Okay, so yes, we do our best to communicate with the community, and if this person is identified, and there's no reason, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't let the community know. Obviously, I've told you already, there's no reason to believe the person's local. So if the person's outside of the country and we're still able to run it down, we'll update the community with that. And there was a second part of that? Is that the second part of that question?
Oh, what? What about copycats?
Okay, so we're always on the lookout for that. That's always a fear, right? When we advertise and we have to talk about these things because they're important to everyone. That's a fear, but it's just something that we are always on the lookout for and are stand ready to address if it happens.
Here's one for you also.
Yeah, and I can share, it asks if we can share the specific threats that are being made. And it's to shoot the school, and the person's telling us that's what they're going to do. So that's it in essence. There is a nuance. The person's clear about that they're not at the school, that they're planning to do it, and that's something that the detectives were okay with sharing to not compromise the integrity of the investigation. So it's just a factor. Obviously, it's something that a person is telling us that's less than, honest. However, that's the information as it's coming in. Is it possible the source of the threat isn't local? Why do we think they picked on our school? Yes, all indications are digitally that it's not local. And why this school? We have some leads that we're following up on to see if we can come up with a legitimate reason. But this happens all over. Once in a while, there's something that a threat comes in here, and maybe it doesn't receive the publicity or the attention that this one got, but a school in another state will also have the same thing. So there's a good chance, obviously, this originates with social media, which covers the globe. So why pick in this school? I think just this time it's luck of the draw. We don't know for sure yet, but if we do come up with a reason and we do identify a person, that's something we'd certainly convey to the public. So hopefully that helps answer the question. Anything else for us?
Yeah, we have more of kind of the is it local and those
Okay.
kinds of things. Yep, got that one.
Yeah, and I apologize. I think you understand without me saying, but to protect the integrity of the investigation, there are details that we do try to keep private, but mostly I wanted to convey to you that there is evidence established that it's not a local threat. And if it were, those are something that we follow up on with the same tenacity, but they typically go a little faster.
And confirming that all three were from the same source.
Yes, that's what we believe. I cannot say 100%, but based on the information that we have and listening to the calls and the specific things that were said, all indications are it's the same suspect, or at least the same source.
Okay, perfect. I think we got
Okay.
So one of the questions is, I'm not really familiar with this, but does CUSD use Hero 911 via School Guard? I don't know if that's some sort of safety thing, so if we can get clarification on that. We do use Catapult, which is an app-based communication and alert system for us, and so we have them on our cell phones, an app on our cell phones. So our staff has those on our cell phones. We're alerted right away. And then also our staff also has them on their laptops. So we have communication measures. We have the ability to text and email or communicate with each other through there, along with any updates and things like that. So what are the protocols with students with cell phones? When can they text their parents? Typically when we go into a lockdown or it's not a drill, kids are already on their phones texting their parents quickly. One of the questions that we got was, why does it take the parents so long to be notified in contrast to the kids notifying their parents? And quite honestly, when we have a lockdown situation, our number one responsibility is student safety and the safety of our staff. We are not sitting behind a computer typing up a message to send out to parents to let them know that there's a lockdown going on. Our number one job is to go out to the campus, and Mr. Swain was out there, even though there was a threat, with police arriving and making sure doors were locked, making sure kids were inside, making sure lights were off, and all of those types of things. Our SRLs go out, our campus monitors go out, our learning directors, our counselors go out to make sure our campus is safe. Once our campus is in lockdown, then we start to notify our parents of that there's something going on. So that's why there's a delay. So what are you going to support with students with panic attacks and other things like that? So I can bring up our lead psychologist, John, and Brittany, if you would like to come up and talk more about the supports that we have, social emotional supports at Clovis West. And they have been meeting with kids both Friday, on Monday, on Tuesday, even though there was no event on Tuesday, again today, and also they can kind of talk about those supports.
Good evening, I'm Brittany Beer. I am the mental health support provider for our Clovis West area. And this is Jonathan Logan, our one of our lead psychologists for the district.
What I'll do is talk a little bit about what we can do district-wide and how we can support. Not only do we have supports at Clovis West, Brittany, there are school psychologists, we have school counselors here as well. But on Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, we also had a team of psychologists that came from throughout the district to provide support to students as that's needed. That support can continue as long as it's needed. We will also provide that support at Fort Washington if that's necessary as well. Each site has school psychologists, each area has a mental health support provider, but if the need gets beyond what that site can do, we will provide support from throughout the district. We have psychologists coming from all over in terms of just providing that support, and the best thing I could say is we will be there as long as the support is necessary or needed.
So from the question, what measures are being taken to help our kids and staff through the social emotional impact of the situation? As one of many individuals who is fiercely passionate about mental health and social emotional wellness in our district, I can assure you that this is what we come to work to do every single day. We're very blessed here at the Clovis West site. At the beginning of the year, our administration made the decision to create a wellness center, and so throughout the year, we always have our doors open where students can stop in, where they can receive social emotional support, they can talk through and process anything that they're struggling with, they can use coping skills, whatever it is that they need. We also have a multitude of staff members on campus that are trained in providing CSI facilitation, and so they are constantly on the lookout and are very diligent in making sure that they are looking for warning signs as far as changes in behavior, comments that students are making that are indicating that there's a potential concern. And so those teachers have been reaching out to myself and multiple staff members all throughout the week to let us know lists of students that they are particularly concerned about. This question specifically talks about how you're worried about how your child may not be asking directly for help. They may not feel comfortable going to a counselor or possibly even an adult, but they are still being affected. So we have a phenomenal program called our peer counseling program here on site. It's at most of our secondary sites throughout the district. And these are highly trained students who have gone through in some cases, multiple years of training where they have learned about how to provide social emotional supports and be social emotional ambassadors on each one of their sites. And what's really wonderful about this is they are students that are constantly taking in and ingesting the information around them, and they're notating anything that's of concern, and they are reaching out to myself, to counselors on an everyday basis when there is something that should be noted or be concerned for. And so we respond as staff members so that the students don't have to, but they're the conduit between students that are in classes and the highly trained staff that are on site.
And then to follow up with what was mentioned earlier is, it's really, really critical, as one of the officers mentioned, is to stay connected with your kids and having conversations. Not one conversation, not two conversations, but then repetitive and consistent conversation about not only what's going on in their world, but how are they feeling and how has maybe this experience affected them. You can also be an advocate for your child in terms of letting us know if you feel like your child needs support. We can offer support here at school, but we can also work with you in terms of accessing supports in the community as well. And just the critical part of being aware and informed about what your child is doing in the world of social media. We have found when there are crises that happen, that as we address those crises, then all of a sudden there's this social media impact, which then can re-escalate the situation, cause kids to become more upset. So I would say monitor their social media accounts, be persistent with that. They may have more than you know, and really just continue to have those conversations, those check-ins at the dinner table over the weekend, those types of things, making sure that you are as aware as you can be in terms of what's going on with your student, with your child, and how they are being impacted on a social emotional level.
Okay, this one's for Chief Mayberry. I'll read it while you come up here and adjust the microphone for yourself. How can not only students but teachers feel safe if they have no way to defend themselves and their students if the shooter enters the classroom. So maybe some classroom safety and what, yeah.
So in the event that access is made into a classroom, what we've talked to the staff about earlier this year, and again, getting that message to the students is, at that point, you have to do what you have to do to defend yourself. Finding items in the classroom to defend yourself, from staplers to chairs to whatever you need to do to try and incapacitate that individual so that you can get out of that situation. So if there's access made to a classroom, what we're going to implore them to do is just to do what you need to do. It's survival at that point in time, and whatever objects that are available to you that could incapacitate that individual is what we would say to utilize and work as a team. You know, there's going to be several, obviously, students and teachers in there, and you know, do what you need to do to get out of there alive.
So just to add to that, we had training this August before we went back to school that Officer Mayberry led. And our practice now is to lock classroom doors, because all the research has showed if someone was coming through and they hit a locked door, they're going on to the next one. So I can tell you that when we go to classes, and I know sometimes it's inconvenient for students and staff, but this is exactly why we do that, is we lock those doors throughout the day. Someone has to open those up. On our campus, we try and lock the doors closest to the exterior. So some of these buildings have 2 entrances. So we're locking the ones that are closest just to make it even a little more challenging to get into the building. So that's something that we continue to stress and do. My deputy principals, Jason James, we practice twice a week the first 6 weeks of school with drills to get ready for something like this. Question is, what is happening with our security cameras? I can tell you throughout the cameras were being monitored not only on our site, in our SRC, but also at the district office as this was playing out. All right? That was another question. Will admin address students directly to reassure their safety? Yes. We've already been through, on Monday, we went through as an admin team to every single classroom, and we talked to the classes to what was shared, what we could share. There is a plan now to go to every PE class, because it's too tough to get everybody in the gym at one time, but we're going to go to every single PE class and have a message for those. Continue to reinforce what we're doing to be safe, continue to reinforce the resources that are there, and share that information with them as well. This one, it kind of piggybacks. Kids in the bathroom, what do? All right? You go to the nearest door. If a door's locked, go to the next door. And finally, if you can't get in a door, get off campus. Just get off campus. Go to run as fast as you can away from the situation. Okay.
So this one might be for our law enforcement community. Is this the same thing that happened last year at Clovis East, similar to Bullard? So that I don't know.
Similar to Bullard. What happened to Bullard? I'm sorry. Similar to the Bullard SWAT.
Similar to Bullard. They're all unique, but similar to Bullard. It was a swatting situation. So a last one says, please continue to respond the way you have. My fear is that these threats will continue and degree of response diminish. Please keep up the guard. And we absolutely will. And you heard our police officers say the same thing. The calls go to them. They call us. We respond accordingly. And like Chief Mayberry said, we're going to go to the highest level, which is a lockdown, and then from there we'll determine the threat with our business or with our police department and partners. So when we get these calls, we will continue to respond the way we're responding. And then Dr. O'Brien, I think you had a couple that you wanted to address. Yep.
Sorry. I want to make sure you know, okay, the most important thing I do every day, the most important thing that Mr. James does every day is to make sure when your kids leave your door until they get back is to take care of their safety. Obviously, grades are important. Everything else that goes to school is important, but our priority is your kids' safety. And that's what drives us every single day. It's been challenging these last few days, but I'm telling you, this is our passion to show up and to take care of yours just like they're our own. So I appreciate you guys coming out tonight, and here's Dr. O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Swain. I want to echo that. You know, we're in the business of educating kids because we love kids. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning, when they come on campus, they become our kids. And as I said, it's very personal for us. We want to take care of our kids. And in that vein, there was a question that was asked, why do we not cancel school? I can tell you, if we thought that school was a dangerous place to be, we would cancel school. But we have every reason to be confident in our law enforcement partners, and we do believe that, and it has played out, that our schools are safe. And I wanted to mention a couple of extra things to piggyback on what Dr. Hammock was saying about the district office team that gets into gear upon immediately hearing about an emergency. Every one of our phones is overridden, no matter what we're doing, no matter if your phone is on silent. An emergency tone comes up on our phone and we can see exactly where it is. And within literally a couple of minutes, we all gather immediately. And as they were saying, we have cameras that we can see every area of this campus. We were able to, everybody that receives that emergency is relevant to the conversation, whether it's the transportation team who would be maybe bringing students on campus in buses, or the CTE folks who would be picking up or dropping students, or our special education team, or our campus catering who might be expecting food to be dropped off. So there is immediately a very collaborative and collective response to make sure that everything is happening in real time to safeguard our students. And so as Dr. Hammock was saying, he mentioned about our first priority being to ensure the safety of the campus. One of the things that our new catapult system does allow us to do is to be getting information from all of these relevant people in real time and formulating meaningful messages to our community. We don't want to send you a text that says Clovis West is in lockdown. That will create panic in our community and our parents. We want to give you valuable, relevant information. And so actually, Catapult allows us to have much more efficient and effective messaging. I hope that you felt that this week. To be very honest with you, every time that we've either had a drill or in the last few days, the real event, we have debriefed afterwards to reflect on any additional ways that we could be better. And of course, this is an evolving reality in our lives, and so it's evolving and changing, and we are evolving and changing and getting better as we go along. So, for example, last Friday, we were dealing with athletics and CTE and transportation. All of these things we were able to ensure that our campus, the focus on our campus was on safety and not on trying to prevent, 40 kids getting off a bus for a basketball game or something like that. Here in Clovis Unified, we've always prided ourselves in doing things with excellence, whether it's our academics or our visual performing arts or our athletics and all of our co-curricular programs. But we also want to excel in school safety. And so the things that we've done over the years, whether it was installing cameras at all of our schools or having an excellent locking system in all of our doors, and the different practices we've put into place have really enabled us to be ahead of the curve with regard to safety. And when I was sitting in a room last Friday, and again on Monday, and again on Tuesday, that was today, right? Today's Wednesday, yes. I'm losing track of the days. But, it's amazing to see the accuracy at which we can respond. Our police chief is there with us, and he's talking to officers that he can see in different places. We're communicating with Fresno PD, navigating all the different pieces in a much more coordinated and responsive way. So I just want to thank Steve France, who's here somewhere. He has overseen safety. Norm Anderson, they've really spearheaded every effort we can to spend our dollars wisely so that we can have these systems in place to take care of our kids and take care of our staff. But I know some more questions may have come to mind. All of our administration are here from the district office in Clovis West. They all have badges, so if you have any other questions, you can certainly stay behind. We're going to wait here until everybody has all of their questions answered. And if in the forthcoming days or weeks you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.